Welcome to Money on Tap. Money on Tap, your personal finance headquarters, where we bring out the professionals' experience and some fun in what we call three-dimensional investing, utilizing insurance, brokerage, and fee-based planning. That's what we do on this show. We look at all sides of the issues, and we bring a fully independent planning perspective to the table.
Welcome back. You're listening to Money on Tap. You can reach us at 855-226-8551 or info@yourmoneyontap.com. My name is Seth Cressman, joined here today with Ben Brayshaw. How are you doing, Ben?
I'm doing good, Seth. I'm doing good. Hey, this day is going to be a good show this week. I'm kind of excited about it. I mean, Dan's out, so we should, step up the quality a little bit and get a fair shake at some really quality, detailed, in-depth planning.
You are so off base with that because that is just the opposite is true. Dan brings so much quality details to this show. Oh, I miss him already.
Well, don't turn off the radio now. You've just told everyone to leave.
Yeah. Oh, that's so fun. And it's our pleasure to be here with you today, guys. I think after Ben saying what he said, I think that the quality of the show today is going to be humble, right? We are truly humbled to be here with you. You could be doing many things with your time today. And to spend some time with Ben and I and what we're bringing to the table with you, it's just an honor for us to be here. And we recognize that. We appreciate you, our listeners, for joining us here today. Ben, tell us what our listeners get to receive today just for showing up.
Just for showing up. They get a great show. Today's show is really something we don't jump into as much as we do in our actually everyday work process. I think that's one of the things that, we don't really dive into, tax planning and mastering, our title of the show, Mastering the Tax Code. We don't really dive into so many, little nuances that we work with and we talk to people about. I mean, most of the time when people come in, we ask them for a year or two's worth of tax returns just to try to get some depth or perspective on how they're doing this, because some people do their taxes themselves, and then we start finding out that they're missing things. And these programs out there, they do a pretty good job for the most part if you're doing your own taxes, but there are things that you can do, and we describe this all the time for local folks. You can drive up and down 93 or 95, and you can pay the toll booth, the taxes, and we talk about that, and that's easy. Everyone can do that. But, you can take alternate roads and routes and so forth around the toll booths, and nothing's illegal about that. And so how you file your taxes really comes up to understanding the code more than, right or wrong. It's just doing it right could be any number of ways. And, a lot of people miss that. And so today I'm really excited because I think we can really unlock a number of tax things for people to talk about. And then, and obviously we're not going to cover all of them, but there's just simple things. And then there's more advanced things that, people can reach out and talk to us about.
Yeah. And speaking of reaching out and talking to us, we love to engage with you, and we love getting the calls and the emails. And frankly, the shows that I think if I were to take a look back and do a little inventory of the shows that we've done, I think we're close to, we should know, we're at like 270 Money on Tap shows. If you're looking to go back into the archive, you could probably pull out some of the fun stuff that we've done and bring it to the table again. But the shows that I've had so much fun doing are the shows that you, the listener, reach out and say, hey, this is where my life is at right now. I don't even know if I need a financial planner. I just have a question. And those are some of the best calls that we get as well, because we just get a lens into, and really that's the humility part here that I want to keep going on them. I think it's hilarious to say we're humble here on this show, and honestly reflect and say, I think we are, because of how much gratitude we have to just be here with you doing what we're doing. It's an honor.
I know. I love it.
You call us up. Yeah, you call us up and it's like, you are front and center. You are the person of the day that we just get to go home and light up and beam because we were able to be of service in a way that makes us just feel like our purpose is being served. And God has given us so many purposes in our life, and this being one of them, that we love to thrive with you in. And we all have questions, as we should. And we all should, I want to take a look at my life and say, hey, how can I do this a little differently? What am I doing here, Ben? What do you see? What can we do in this arena that I just don't know a whole lot about? And if you do know a ton about the tax code and how to operate, like Ben was talking about, going through 95 and 92, which, by the way, still every time you say that freaks me out. I'm like, no, don't drive 95. Please slow down a little bit would be nice. But that's you East Coast folk. You like to keep your, speed a little higher than us, unless you're over here in Idaho, and then everybody drives 100. Yeah.
Everyone drives pretty fast around here too. And I think slowing down and listening to this show today is probably going to put you on the fast track to a much better tax scenario. And that's what I was kind of thinking for your analogy. But Seth, I agree with you. We love what we do here. I mean, we sit down with people and just kind of work through their specific situation. And I love the cleverness that we get the opportunity sometimes to help people really find something that they never saw before and really put somebody on a different trajectory. When we get to do that, that's really where I get my thrills, my excitement in helping people take it to another level.
Amen. Amen. I feel like that's our prayer today with you guys before we jump into this show. And speaking of, it is time for Money in the News.
First up, we have our first article is AI language models are rife with different political biases. This is a great article from MIT Technology Review, and it's written by Melissa Hikila, I think. I'll take that for as best I can do. But, with all the AI surge, there's so much conversation about what you're getting out of AI. It's like it's this assumptive reality of what the future is or what you should do, or projection or analysis of some foretold thing that might happen or be. People are, college students are using it to write papers. People are using it to ask outcomes of various things based on historical data. But this article actually dives into an entirely different perspective, and it's the bias training that exists inside AI language. A group of students and professors had actually tested various AIs, ChatGPT, OpenAI, Meta's AI program, and so forth. And they started asking it questions to find out if there was any political biases inside the systems. Now, it's kind of interesting, since the success, it's faced a lot of criticism from a lot of people who are, right-wing faced, perspectives. Like, hey, listen, this is really pushing a liberal worldview when you ask it a question. And all sorts of people are asking questions into the program. Now, they actually started sampling different data and different questions. And in the third stage of their research, I'm quoting the article, the team found striking differences in how the political leanings of AI models affects what kinds of content models classified as hate speech and misinformation. And they started diving into this. And the models that were trained with left-wing data were obviously more sensitive to hate speech targeting ethnic, religious, and sexual minorities in the U.S., such as Black and LGBTQ people. But the models that were trained on right-wing data were more sensitive to hate speech against white Christians, men, which is really pretty overwhelming to listen to as a white Christian male today, Seth.
Yeah. Part of me says that we really should not be surprised, because who's feeding the beast? That's my question. And I feel like there's part of this that's I just don't know enough to necessarily speak to. I remember we were talking about some of this stuff that was going on in Snapchat and really cautioning people that with kids that have Snapchat to be aware that Snapchat kind of there's like an AI Snapchat feedback thing. I'm sorry, I'm stumbling on this, but there's the situation was that you put in a question and said, hey, I'm really concerned about, XYZ, and Snapchat would interact with you and say, tell me more about that. Well, anyways, it went down basically a road that for me was stepping way over a boundary with children, which is who are using Snapchat and leading them down make a decision for yourself, kind of a transgender deal, and letting them know, hey, it's okay to be what you want to be. And they were saying even that they were like a 13-year-old or something like that. And this kind of goes that same way for me. I'm like, my gosh, you guys, what do we need to do to just get actual news that doesn't have a bent to it? Hey, there's 14 large language models out there that they were pouring through this data. I didn't realize there was that many in this arena. I mean, I guess I shouldn't be surprised there too. There's probably more. But to learn that the ChatGPT AI was more leaning into the libertarian and left wing, while Meta, which I have to take as Meta, right? Facebook Meta, LLAMA, Llama, was the most right wing authoritarian. Now, which one of these is pouring out your perspective that you maybe are looking for or not? I guess maybe that's the option that people need to be prepared for is if you're engaging with AI and you want to be hearing a perspective on a certain topic like this, then that's the direction you want to go. As far as my experience with the AI, we're going nowhere in any direction that's, right or left, just purely looking for some help in some HR arenas. That seems to be the most help that we've seen the AI really helping to support in our business lately.
Yeah, I would say that, there's definitely a left-leaning slant to all of them on some level. Like the ones that were the farthest right were just slightly to the right. Looking at their bar chart. Now they didn't,
Nobody's going full right. They just can't happen in tech, huh?
But there was definitely some that were pretty heavily left. And so, it's complicated, but what they ended up, I think from an investment perspective, AI is something that everyone's talking about. Like, how do I get into AI? How do I do this? There's so much private equity out there getting into private AI investment programs and who's going to be the big platform, and Apple's building an AI program. And there's so many pieces to this. So you got to ask yourself, what place does AI play in our lives in the future? How is that going to shape our perspectives? Because when you use like any of the social media programs, if you like a construction project or a kitchen or whatever, next thing you know, you're scrolling through and every other one of those is a construction project or a kitchen or a deck or whatever. And so, or if you like soccer like I do, it's like, oh, everything is soccer. It's like, and I'm like, well, I would be interested in other streaming scenarios or whatever. So it's kind of interesting. They're already utilizing this, but how is it going to shape your brain? Like no one has really, really figured out how AI and all of this stuff is really going to twist the way you think, because your brain is a muscle and you're exercising it. And, if we're going to invest in this stuff, both, from a development standpoint as well as our dollars, we need to really make sure from a, some sort of ethical standpoint that we really do understand how these things are really being used and utilized, and who's really controlling the wheel behind this thing to make sure you're investing in a fair, good company.
Wow. Well said, Ben. And that's a good question. I look forward to getting more into that with you. CVS is laying off 5,000 workers. Thank you, Jordan Valinsky. And this is one of those articles that popped up that at first I was, of course, not excited to see that there's layoffs happening. And what was more interesting to this and what kind of pulled it through for us was that the layoffs are happening in an effort by CVS, not only a cost-cutting effort by CVS, but the cost-cutting, the reductions have the purpose of pivoting for CVS into this evolving, adaptive, new consumer health needs mode, where they are becoming the customer-facing entity for clinics, and these are like they're calling a health hub store layout. 2021, CVS announced that it was closing 900 stores, which was about 10% of its footprint, in response to this changing need of our consumer patterns. And this is something that we've been talking about. And so, yes, it's nice to bring a little bit of confirmation. What have we been talking about? How is the healthcare landscape changing, and really what are some of these opportunities for you as an investor to take a look at and be aware of? How can you engage in this in a healthy way? Does that necessarily a CVS solution or a Walgreens or a Rite Aid. I'm not pulling through any data on that today to try to understand which one of these is maybe a better investment option. And you also might be engaging in that healthcare arena where you have opportunities yourself to be maybe starting something along these lines. Or what I also love to see is that people take a look at this and say, this is not the model. This is not really, yes, we understand it's meeting a need, but maybe I'm more of a niche healthcare provider that really wants to make sure that I'm having a different relationship with these clients out here. And maybe this is an opportunity for you to explore those.
Yeah, I would say that, CVS is, they're laying off these internal workers and not the actual storefront workers. And part of the whole strategy of CVS from an investment standpoint, whether it's CVS, Walgreens, any of the, Rite Aid, any of these companies, they've actually, the reason you see them on every corner is because of this demographic shift that we keep talking about at this show. And if you don't understand the demographic shift of the 40 million Americans plus that are over 65, retired, not working, and so forth, their health needs have continued to increase. Now, we've gone from 5% of America roughly retired in 2007 to over 15% of America retired today. We've tripled that number, and we're going to over 30% of America retired in the next 20 years. Matter of fact, it's about 38% of our current population. That is think about almost 40% of today's world fully retired. And the developing healthcare needs that all of these people have, these CVSs and Walgreens and Rite Aids, they know there's not enough doctors or nurses to take care of everybody. So that's why, there's been efforts to allow, pharmacists to change medications so that if you're taking a high blood pressure medication and that one's not working for you, they can switch it without being a doctor. Things like that they can work with you inside of, the prescription world, because there's just not enough medical professionals to help everyone, especially what the future holds. And so all of these locations are actually designed to turn into patient rooms. They have entire floor plans. So when they build these things, they're all structured in a certain way so that they could have 1, 2, 3 patient rooms based on demand for a certain area on top of that thing. That's why they're on every corner, every location. These places are going to be in significantly high demand is the projection. And it leaves for an interesting story just because of, right, everything's about demand. So I do think it's interesting that they're laying off the internal space, but yeah, they're not getting rid of, the store-facing front. But they did close 10% of their stores a few years ago. What was that, Seth?
900 stores. 900
stores in 2021. I think that was also a cost-cutting event too. Some projected that this was, that they had overbuilt stores. We all kind of think there's too many pharmacies, but if you're collecting medications every day, that's important. We were also 2021. People weren't going to the pharmacy per se. They were just going to the hospital. Everyone was kind of still in that, lockdown world. And so post 2020, these stores were not making a ton of money. So they did do some cost cutting. So whether or not that was COVID relevant only, COVID induced, or, a factor of it, it's definitely a question mark for me of what CVS looks like in the future.
Yes, it is. Hey, Azmi Haroon, we got to thank you because you made us laugh and brought us a Man Says Taco Bell's Mexican Pizza and Crunchwrap Supreme ads deceptively show menu items loaded with at least double the amount of beef and other ingredients in a new lawsuit. A New York man sued Taco Bell because he was fed up with fast food companies' portion sizes. And in a proposed class action lawsuit, the alleged Taco Bell's adverts were deceptive. How many times have I had that inclination that I just got robbed when I didn't get what I thought I was getting at the drive-thru? Because boy, do they ever make it look good. And what I usually wind up having is,
something less than mediocre. Yeah. The taco terror is what I'm going to call this guy. So, hey, listen, this is really interesting. If investing is not your thing, maybe you're going to start making money by suing people. Yeah. The pictures that they show are, obviously everything you'd imagine. There's this beautiful gaping taco oozing with cheese, and then what he gets is nothing. There's a pizza comparison where there's just meat piled up and it's thick and it looks like a burger. And the one he has looks like they dropped some sauce on it. So, yeah, there's a legitimate scenario here, but to be suing $5 million for all the New York customers for his $5 taco, This is what bogs up our court system. So I'm not a big fan of this, but I do think there's an integrity issue here for Taco Bell and probably every fast food chain, because I've never went to one and said, boy, this actually looks better than the picture.
Yeah. I mean, every time I think I've ever gone through a Taco Bell drive-through, I feel like it's, well, for one, if you actually get the order that you ordered, I'm amazed. I'm like, whoa, that's what I ordered. And then as I'm looking at what I'm eating and what Kira's eating, I'm like, I can't tell the difference, even though we actually ordered two separate things clearly. But everything just seems like it's a mixed bag. You just kind of order and you get what you get and you go away and hopefully it's close.
These law firms just want to settle. They want to collect their 30%, and no harm, no foul here for $5. If you don't like what they're providing you, just don't shop there. I mean, he didn't get injured. He didn't get harmed. No one, I feel at this point in time, you have to kind of say, I was wronged where it impacted me for a long period of time. Like, you bought a taco, you didn't like it. You go to the manager, say, I want my money back. This is horrendous. This doesn't look like the picture. I mean, $5 at this point in time, you're going to sue over $5 million. The only people that are going to make any money off of this are the attorneys that you hired, and maybe you're going to get a few bucks. I mean, maybe that's their scam. But the taco terror has struck again.
Only in America, folks. Enjoy that freedom, because you're free to do what you want to do. You are here with us today, and we're grateful for you. At Money on Tap, we are mastering the tax code for your financial advantage today. There's going to be just this is going to be a fun show. And it's kind of funny how, to me, so many people will typically kind of shut down once we say tax. And you don't have to. You don't have to run away, folks. We're going to have some fun here at Money on Tap. And we're going to learn some new stuff and create opportunities for you to save some money and bring home more of that bacon. All right. I can smell it cooking already. You're listening to Money on Tap. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
Hey everyone, Dan Mickelon here with Brayshaw Financial. Looking for a hassle-free way to invest? Look no further than Brayshaw Financial Group. With Brayshaw Financial Group, you can start investing with as little as $100, enjoy a user-friendly platform with a diverse range of investment options. Visit Brayshaw Financial Group and start your investment journey today. Brayshaw Financial Group, investing made easy.
We appreciate you listening to Money on Tap. You can contact us at 855-226-8551 or email us at info@yourmoneyontap.com. And now, more of this week's program.
Welcome back. You're listening to Money on Tap. You can reach us at 855-226-8551 or info@yourmoneyontap.com. We are talking about mastering the tax code for your financial advantage. And as we have talked about so many times, it's the tax code is a lens. It's that we have to look into what opportunities we have with finances. It's a changing landscape, and so much when we're working with a new client or a current client, and we're taking a look at the tax returns. There's usually, when we're having these conversations and looking at this, there's questions that will come up. Well, this is an interesting story. We're trying to develop here and understand more about your specific situation and what you're doing and why you're doing it. And a lot of the times when we would take a look at taxes and, maybe you have a business, or maybe you have children, or maybe there's all sorts of different parts of the tax code that we can pull through more about your circumstances and situations that, again, allow us to just engage a little differently in our planning conversations. And a lot of the time, a lot of the questions I have coming up are driven through the tax return and the conversation of the taxes. And Ben, you were saying, stocks are going to do what they're going to do. The market is really a place that is, so much of it is out of our control, and we enjoy working in the market and trying to pull additional returns or alter the volatility what we hold, and there's different reasons why we have different investments. And again, there's going to be things that happen inside of that really are out of our control. But you said the tax code is what it is. And understanding that creates outcomes that are so much more predictable than doing things in the market. So it's really a bedrock for us in the conversations that we have with you.
Yeah, I would say that, I try to put it in perspective for people and just say, hey, the stock market's a level playing field. Everyone can buy the same stocks. Everyone can buy bonds, mutual funds, and so forth. And there are people who trade those better. But for our listeners today, just taking it, irrelevant of, if you're just buying the S&P 500 or, you got a diversified portfolio, whatever your story is, at the end of the day, you're going to perform just like everybody else if they choose that same investment story. So putting that kind of level playing field on the sideline, you're just doing this on your own, trading your own stocks. The real opportunity, the real difference is the taxes, how much you give away of your money, both in, like when you're investing your money, how much did you make, and are you going to pay gains on that? There's just a lot of different things. It's down to things like, actually selling a piece of land or a stock or something when you've owned it for 12 months. Like you've reached that long-term cap gains period versus short-term cap gains. When your short-term cap gains is taxes, ordinary income. That's kind of one of those basic things a lot of people know. But when it comes to your taxes, this is where you get to change the game. This is where you either, allow yourself to keep more income, you're either building more wealth, or you're maximizing your investment returns. I think those are the three, big fundamental pieces that change everything else moving forward, right? I mean, it's a different launching pad when you change the tax game for yourself to be maximized, to be as little impact on how much it takes back from you each and every time you make a move. I mean, so many people, I literally ask everybody for their tax return. And I would say, Seth, the majority of the time people are like, why do you need that? What about my tax return does that matter? And it really dives into the life of a lot of people in what they're doing and how they're managing their assets. I mean, I meet so many people that are like, hey, listen, you just do this. It changes the number of write-offs you have. It does this. It does that. All we talk about is how to really dive in to maximize the taxes. The government has given you lots of different ways, to run your taxes through. Like, I mean, you could have a second home that maybe you rent out for a couple of weeks. Well, now all of a sudden you got deductions, but a lot of people don't do that. They just like, oh, well, there's a little bit of sacrifice kind of in everything, but there's options for everybody to do something.
Yeah. Yeah. And if you're just there and you've got that thing nailed down, what it's going to allow us to do on our end is to layer on the next level or the next layer of the story, and to do it in a way that has minimum impact in terms of taxability would be one of the things we want to make sure that we're doing on our end, and has, the other side of that is maximum impact as well in creating the next layer or the next part of your story that's directing us towards, the charitable giving that you're doing. How are we doing those? That's definitely just a huge part of what it is that we're going to be talking about. With that, well, guess what? There's tax credits. And one of the things we want to take a look at is maximizing those tax credits. Ben?
Yeah, I would say one of the first things is a lot of people, there's a lot of people who have been going back to school. Some sort of educational opportunity awaits itself for somebody. They're looking at that, and it's a lot of professionals do this. A lot of people really step into that void. I meet people all the time. I'm getting my master's. I'm doing this. I'm doing that. There's the American Opportunity Tax Credit, and there's the lifelong learning credit. I see a lot of people actually doing education, Seth, and not taking advantage of that credit. They don't even talk to their CPA, or they're or they're doing it themselves. It doesn't come up, and that's something that I mean, it's a credit. So the difference between a deduction and a credit, I think, is important to cover because, when you get to deduct something, that means it says, hey, here's my income, and I get to lower the income amount that you're going to tax me on. Okay. But the credit is completely different. So after the government's done their taxable scenario and they say you owe $5,000, the credit is then taken off of that number dollar for dollar of what you owe. And some of these credits come back to you, and some of the education credits can be refunded to you, Seth. So that's a huge opportunity where you might be bringing money to your pocket and lowering your tax bite. Something that's, I think it's just something that's missed. And a lot of people say, I can't afford to go back to school. Well, this might help create an affordability opportunity, too, to advance your ability to improve your job, improve your career, maybe get you to where you want and meet some dreams.
Yeah. The other credit that we have around our children is the dependent care, right? For child and dependent care credit. That gives us up to $4,000 for one qualifying individual, or up to $8,000 for two or more qualifying individuals. And that is a chunk of change where if you have a child under 13, and there's all sorts of different ways to qualify for that. And that's one of those things we say, hey, run it by the professional, make sure that whatever services you're paying for do qualify. But I'm quite impressed with how so many professionals are able to get different kinds of qualifications around expenses for those little rugrats of ours that have hungry mouths and lots of activities that they're engaging in for this credit. And that's just one of those, again, another way of just paying attention to those dollars that are coming through towards those credits.
Yes, Seth, I would just say that the child tax credit is something that has moved a lot over the last few years, especially with COVID and all the different pieces moving there. But what's really exciting is I think this is one of the best programs we have, because it doesn't just cover, kind of lower income families. It really does cover the middle and kind of like upper middle, I would say, income families, because, a single person making, $200,000 a year, and that's your modified adjusted gross income, can get this credit. And if you're joint filer, it's up to $400,000, and the whole thing doesn't phase out under a joint scenario till $480,000 of modified adjusted gross income. That's a ton of money. I mean that is not the average income in America by any means. It's way above. So I'm just I really think that this is probably one of the best scenarios. Now, it's not a refundable. It used to be a refundable credit. I mean, under the Trump administration, I believe they made it refundable, and it actually went up. So it's come down a little bit. But it is a credit, not a deduction. And I think that's important for people to know. So, if you end up, if this takes you into a credit scenario, you're not going to get that money back anymore.
You're listening to Money on Tap. You can reach us at 855-226-8551 or info@yourmoneyontap.com. I just remembered something, Ben. If you have us on your podcast right now, there's a button there that says subscribe. If you do that, let us know. We've got some Money on Tap gear we cannot wait to send you. And also, we would just want to appreciate you for being here with us today. The phone calls that you get and the engagement that we get, it's so fun for us at Money on Tap to get an opportunity to just get the questions that you have and get them answered and get you on your way. All right, we'll be right back with more Mastering the Tax Code. Hey guys, Seth Cressman with Brayshaw Financial Group. Are you ready to take control of your financial future? Look no further than Brayshaw Financial Group. Our team of experienced advisors is dedicated to helping beginners like you build wealth through smart investing strategies. Visit BrayshawFinancial.com today and start your journey towards financial independence. Brayshaw Financial Group, your partner in wealth creation.
You can reach us at 855-226-8551 or email us at info@yourmoneyontap.com.
Welcome back. You're listening to Money on Tap. You can reach us at 855-226-8551 or info@yourmoneyontap.com. Quick thank you for those that are subscribing on the podcast. Please drop us a note. We want to send you some Money on Tap gear as a thank you for the subscription and just connect with you. Looking forward to doing more of that with you guys. We have been in a conversation here about really creating a new lens for you and your taxes, or just getting the most out of your taxes. And how do we do that? Well, there's the credits that we were talking about, and now we're kind of going to go over to some of the other deductions that are available. And let's see what we have on tap first. Are we talking about mortgage interest? Is that right, Ben?
Yeah, this is pretty interesting. You can deduct. So it kind of goes back to this big story, Seth, the big SALT tax conversation. The state and local taxes and deducting that. And during the Trump administration, he lopped that thing all the way down to $10,000 as a max. Now, that has, since 2022, has moved up to $80,000. It was a large argument that, the SALT tax limitation by Trump really targeted most of the Democratic states, which, limited deductions for a lot of people. And it wasn't just the Democratic states, but it was pretty heavily focused at them. With this increase up to $80,000, if you have a mortgage, married, filing jointly, or single, and it's $750,000, is your mortgage, you can deduct that interest off of your tax return. And that includes second homes too, which I think is, tremendously interesting, because a lot of people have, second homes or second places, and they use that property to leverage it. And as long as it's associated with a home that you're residing in on some level, that's a deductible opportunity for a lot of people, and something that a lot of people don't think about, Seth.
Yeah, it's interesting that ruling on that second home has a couple of options, and this is actually your primary residence as well. I was just noticing that the second home, you have to, if you do rent it out, you have to be there longer for at least 14 days or more than 10% of the number of days that you rented it out. Just one of those qualifiers there for using the deduction on that interest. Now, something else that a lot of people don't know about, we've talked about it several times here on Money on Tap, it's a thing called the Augusta rule. And what has opened up, especially post-COVID, because so many people are working from home, is your ability to basically rent your home to yourself for 14 days. Again, is that maximum that they're going to give you on that ruling. And that actually came from really the Augusta, Georgia, the Masters, and those houses down there that people were renting out. Somehow, some way, they were able to get this through the legislation that says, hey, we can rent our house to ourselves for 14 days and deduct that. And if then there's some ways that you want to make sure that you're, crossing your T's, dotting your I's on this stuff, consult the professionals. But so few people know about that. And it really is an opportunity for a lot of people, especially in the people that own their own businesses or working from home these days.
Yeah, the Augusta rule is pretty cool. Seth, the fact that you can rent out your house for 14 days, not pay any taxes on that income, and still deduct your interest expense on your home is kind of like, it seems unfair. And just by the way, if you're renting your house out for 2 weeks during the Augusta, that's a significant amount of money. Those things rent for huge dollars, from what I've heard. So that is interesting. So there's a lot of moving parts, I think, is really the conversation here, because we're not going to answer everyone's questions on these things today. But as we go through these things, understand that we're just covering the tip of the iceberg. it just goes so deep and so long. We're going to hop into healthcare, and this is something that's going to be growing as time goes on. But you're allowed to deduct up to 7.5% of your current income for healthcare expenses that you could not get reimbursed for on your taxes. And this is really interesting because, for a lot of people, they're not really focused on that. They don't hit the itemization, and there's all these tests, because you get an automatic deduction for healthcare when they're doing the test. So you actually have to really both have some fairly significant healthcare costs that were not reimbursed. You also have to go over on that 7.5%. You have to go over whatever the standardized healthcare number that they throw in automatically, Seth, as they do those numbers. And then on top of all of that, you have to go over the standardized deduction piece as well that the government automatically gives you, which is like roughly $27,000 a year. So there's a lot of little caveats here, but as you're kind of going through this process, this is something to keep in mind, because in reality, lots of people don't have ongoing healthcare problems that are not covered by health insurance. Usually this happens to somebody who had a kind of one-off experience, right, Seth? Like there's been a health event that year, it was addressed. You had a $10,000 or $25,000 deductible, or something that was not covered, and you had to pay for it, and now you have a deduction, and that's can push you over a lot of limits, and then you get to deduct this thing. So this is not an everyday scenario, but and Lord willing, it's not an everyday scenario for you. But for those, it's good to know that hey, there's a healthcare conversation around deductions that if you have a health event, you should contact someone like us so that we can help you through that and have a conversation of what that looks like.
Yeah, speaking of healthcare, one of my favorite places to go in this realm is the HSA, and we've done shows just on the HSA. If you're not familiar with it, it's worth the time just to take a look into these programs and see what's available. Why do we love it so much? Well, if you have a high deductible plan, then you qualify for it, which is a lot of the younger families that are looking for lowering their costs on the insurance side because they're relatively healthy and simultaneous looking for a way to reduce their taxes. And the HSA allows you $3,850 per person or $7,750 to contribute, and that comes right off of that taxes for you, or the income for you in that deduction. And what you can do with that is you can accumulate it tax-free, much like a Roth or an IRA. And if you're using it for qualified medical expenses on the way out, it's tax-free too. And then there's some other things down the road that you can do with it. Not going to get into the weeds on this, but we consider it a triple threat for the taxes, the deduction, the accumulation of it, and where you can invest it and continue to grow that money, and the distribution of it. All three of those are tax savings events for you in this HSA.
Yeah, I think, Seth, I'm really glad I wasn't even thinking about the HSA piece. If you don't have an HSA and you have the ability to have one, and again, go watch our show, it is literally one of the strongest tools the government's given us outside of the Roth, and I think it potentially is stronger than the Roth IRA. It's one of the few programs I max out every year. I mean, literally without question. It's literally the first thing I do, Seth. Every year I max that thing out. So I think the max is like $7,000 a year. You put it in, it's a deduction. It comes out tax-free for all your health care. It can convert into a retirement plan at some point in time. There's limitations around that, but way out in the future, if you kind of overfund this thing, but it grows tax-free. It's just a really phenomenal program. Go ahead.
Yeah, and if you're using it as a pass-through just for those for the deduction on the front end and the distribution towards those medical expenses, all those medical expenses still qualify for your health care expenses and deductions as well.
Absolutely. So you're paying for it with tax-free money and still getting the deduction.
Yeah, and usually with these kind of why do we like it so much? Because usually, like on an IRA, you're not paying the tax on the front end, but you're paying it on the back. Or the Roth, you're paying it on the front end, and you're not paying it on the back. This just kind of opens the door wide open, really, as far as the tax code is considered. There's a limit on how much you can put into the thing, but as far as what they're giving you on the front and the back, and still keeping your qualified deductions on your health care expenses there, it's phenomenal.
Yeah, we nicknamed the HSA the triple threat. So when you watch our show, that'll be a good one to discuss.
If I have another child, I'm going to name it HSA.
Don't do that because the autocorrect on Microsoft keeps turning it to has. So anyways, as we're talking about deductions, one of the biggest conversations around deductions, and probably for a ton of our listeners, is the charitable side, right? A lot of us give to our churches and the ministries and the organizations that really keep America as special as it is. I mean, it really is amplified. Our government has allowed us to deduct. I mean, it's hard to say that, our government's allowed us to deduct our tithe and so forth. But it's true. I mean, when Jesus said, "Give to Caesar what's Caesar, and give to me what's mine," that conversation is very broad, right? So, a lot of people ask, hey, what does tithe look like? How is that? I think that's a personal conversation for a lot of people. But currently, our government allows you to deduct all those charitable things. But there's lots of ways to give, Seth, that change charitable giving to be potentially more favorable. And I think a lot of people don't realize that the power of giving can be really, really valuable in how you do it. Okay. I would say one of the things, I would call it the QCD, the Qualified Charitable Distributions, where you can give directly out of your IRA directly to the charity. So it bypasses your entire tax return. It's an income that you don't have to declare. And that's really valuable when we come to things like the conversation around standard deduction. So this is going to get a little complicated, but I want you to really focus in right now because this is really, really valuable for our listeners. If you're married and filing jointly, irrelevant of any deduction you have, the government says before you do your taxes, we're just going to give you $27,700 to deduct this year, married filing jointly, and half that number if you're single. Now, that means you have to go over the $27,700 with your other deductions, your health care and your charity giving and all that stuff. Like all your deductions have to total more than $27,700 for you to use a number bigger than $27,700. You get the higher of the two of them. They don't combine. They don't go together. It's just A or B, whichever's higher. 93% of America, Seth, right? 93% of America just uses the $27,700. And that was increased by Trump's administration that high. It went from about 20% of America used to itemize. Now we're down to 7% of America now itemizes. And for a lot of people, they're giving and giving and giving, and they might give, say $10,000 a year to their church, which, could be a lot of money, might be a little bit of money. But the truth is that they give $10,000 every year and they never go over the $27,000. And so when you give $27,000, say, let's just, for 5 years, you have $27,000 over 5 years and that's just your deduction. Well, that's great, but that's nothing compared to mixing and matching charitable distribution strategies. Like, for instance, donor advised funds are very popular today. Donor advised funds allow you to give your tithe, say, for the next 5 years into an account today, take the deduction. So if you're giving to a church for $10,000 a year for 5 years, you say, hey, I'm going to put $50,000 in this donor advised fund today, and it will give to the church over the next 5 years. Instead of the $27,000 this year, you get to deduct the $50,000 you put in the donor advised fund. Now, how does that mathematically work? So if you just went with a standard deduction, did your rigmarole, give your $10,000 yourself every year to your church, you'd be able to deduct about $140,000, a little less than that, about $140,000. Now, if you put $50,000 into a charitable program, a donor advised fund, right now today, and then the next 4 years didn't do anything to the church, just had the donor advised fund give the money, and you took the $27,700 deduction, you would have increased your deductions to about $160,000, a little over $160,000. You go from $140,000 to $160,000. You gave no more money to the church, and you really did nothing more than just open a simple account that gave the money out the same way. You would have added deductions of about $22,500, I think it is. So that's a massive increase in deductions just by using a really simple program. That's not even getting into some of the charitable trust stuff that we do, Seth, that really launches people into maximizing their charitable giving in a way that blows the tax code way open for people, especially if you're philanthropic.
You're listening to Money on Tap. You can reach us at 855-226-8551 or info@yourmoneyontap.com. We are, as Ben said, blowing away the tax code, or mastering the tax code is this show. And we're going to take a quick break. Be right back.
Are you looking for personalized guidance to kickstart your investing journey? Look no further. Brayshaw Financial Group and our planners are here to help. Our team of experts will provide personalized advice tailored to your financial goals. Visit BrayshawFinancial.com today to schedule your free consultation. Brayshaw Financial, investing made easy.
We appreciate you listening to Money on Tap. You can contact us at 855-226-8551 or email us at info@yourmoneyontap.com. And now, more of this week's program.
Welcome back. You're listening to Money on Tap. You can reach us at 855-226-8551 or info@yourmoneyontap.com. Thank you so much for being here with us today and choosing Money on Tap to spend your time with us and make us your number one choice for how do you financially plan for what's coming down the pipe in your taxes today. This is a show that we love to jump into with you. There's so much more that we haven't even covered. I mean, really, this is the tip of the iceberg, as Ben has said many times. And the part that's really fun, I think, again, for us is when not only are we just, these are just factoids and stuff like that we're kind of talking about. It's like, well, is this an opportunity? I mean, you may or may not know. When we take a look and sit down and do some planning with you, there's a whole story that rolls out of this. There's a reason. There's an understanding. And then there's coming together and there's coming up with, hey, well, what do you think? Or what could we do this? Have you tried or explored this? There's different avenues and different levers that we have here. And in the process of this, what happens? You become empowered to the enterprise of you and your family and your goals to get there faster. I mean, when we're talking about possibly not getting taxed on, you name it. It's a small dollar amount. It's a large dollar amount. It adds up. It is so critical to bring efficiency into this world for you so that you can compound more effectively. You can give more intentionally and with more purpose and effectively. It's not just, hey, the bucket's getting passed, maybe I do this. No, you can have intention and purpose and design around your heart and what you're called to. And I love seeing that happen.
Yeah, I think, Seth, compound is really the story. I mean, it's all about every dollar that you maximize. You can't go back, right? So, whether you're 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, whatever it is, whatever we can do today to make tomorrow better financially, get on the phone with us. We're happy to talk with you. Maybe you're doing everything great, and that's awesome. Wouldn't it just be wonderful to have a box to check to say I went through that and things are good? But if we can help you, really discover some new opportunities, that's really where the difference is. And whether it's not us, do it with somebody. My biggest encouragement to people is get help. The financial world is not something to try to traverse yourself. There's just too many moving parts to really be an expert in this because everything is so interlinked, like the type of investments you buy versus, what your tax scenario is and trying to maximize that. I've met people who are buying, taxable bonds that they thought were tax-free from the municipal side, but because of their income levels, their alternative minimum tax, they got hit on those taxes when they should have really bought, AMT exempt muni bonds. And there's just so many different moving parts of really making everything work together. It's significantly more complicated than it has. I don't want to make it sound overwhelming, but to do it on your own, you just don't know where you're losing potentially thousands and thousands of dollars of just taxes because from here, the launching pad of where you're starting out is really where you're going to go. And setting yourself up right really is. It's all about the money you keep.
You've been listening to Money on Tap. You can reach us at 855-226-8551 or info@yourmoneyontap.com. So good to be here with you today, Ben. Thank you for the time, the opportunity to just explore and dive into this conversation with you. If you're new to Money on Tap, we just welcome you aboard and so glad you're here with us today. And if you're coming back, we appreciate you here as well. Be successful in your investing, people. We care about you and the moves that you're making today for you and your family, and love being a part of this journey with you. Thanks again.
The views expressed are not necessarily the opinion of this radio station and should not be construed directly or indirectly as an offer to buy or sell any securities mentioned herein. Investing is subject to risks, including loss of principal invested. No strategy, product, material, or tool mentioned can assure a profit nor protect against loss. Please note that individual situations can vary. Therefore, the information, products, materials, or tools mentioned should be relied upon when coordinated with individual professional advice. Past performance is not a guarantee of future results. This show may be subsidized in whole or in part by a product sponsor or issuer. Securities and advisory services offered through SagePoint Financial Incorporated, member FINRA SIPC, and a registered investment advisor. All other services offered through Brayshaw Financial Group LLC are independent of SagePoint Financial. SagePoint Financial and Brayshaw Financial Group do not provide tax or legal advice. Main office is located at 116 South River Road, Bedford, New Hampshire, 03110, and can be reached at toll-free 855-226-8551.